Toastmasters for having this workshop. I will now share my screen with everybody. And before I do that, if we have enough time, I will let you guys watch my district speech at the end of the session, if we have time after Q&A. So you can understand more of what I'm explaining in the workshop. So when you look at the speech, you will understand what I did exactly and what I always do in my speeches. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay, I want to make this as interactive as possible. So time and again, I will ask questions. Feel free to unmute yourselves and answer the questions, or even put in the chat box, and we'll go through this together. Because I want it to be as interactive so I can understand some of you who are going to compete in a speech, or some of you who are interested in writing such speeches, which are very powerful. So ladies and gentlemen, today I'll be doing a short workshop on crafting a winning speech. Now, crafting a winning speech is like making nasi goreng. You need the right ingredients. And I would really like to thank Bhavesh earlier for mentioning nasi goreng. It's very true, you know. It's one of the most famous dishes in Indonesia, Malaysia, and it's exactly like that. You need the correct ingredient to make the correct speech. Now, first things first, how do you find the topic of your speech? Many people ask me, like, where do you get your ideas, or where do you think, where do you just come up with a topic for your speech? So there are a couple of questions you have to ask yourself when you are writing your speech. The first question is, what life-changing experiences do I have? And I would like to ask anyone in the audience today, what do you consider a life-changing experience? There's no right or wrong answers here, just anybody.
For me, it was experiencing poverty for the first time in a way that I've never experienced before.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good life-changing experience. Poverty. What else?
For me, my experience in this pandemic is so unprecedented.
Yeah, the pandemic is a very good example of a life-changing experience, right? For many of us, we're lonely. Many of us, we have lost a business, or our business has gone down. We've lost a job. Very good experience. What else can be considered a life-changing experience? Anyone here ever gone through a health crisis?
Okay. Mine is from a lady to become a married person and having babies. Yes, that's all.
Yeah, I'm originally from Hong Kong, and that is District 89. And back then, there was a speech by a lady. She's an opera singer now, and she spoke about how she had to give up her dream because of her marriage and children. But then 15 years later, she decided to chase her dream. And her speech title was called The Flame. So you see, that's also a life-changing experience. So that's the first question everybody has to ask themselves. I've heard speeches from district champions about having cancer, and overcoming it, or having to face the death of a loved one. So anything that changed your life is a life-changing experience, okay? That's the first question you ask yourself. The second question you ask yourself, okay, my PowerPoint froze let me just sort. Yeah, what if this was your last day on this earth? What would you say to the world? Now, I know that question seems very hard, but if you practically think about it, right? Once Gandhi was asked this question, what is your message to the world? And Gandhi said, my life is my message. So if I had to ask you this question, if today was the last day of your life, what is it you want to tell the world? Right? For me, it would be follow your passion. Because I used to have a business background. I was in the import-export business, and I left all of that and I got into becoming a public speaking trainer and coach, because I was feeling empty for almost 12, 13 years of my life. I just felt that I don't know, what am I doing? Why am I doing it anymore? You know, and I left that and I got into public speaking. So that's question number 2 you have to ask yourself. Question number 3. Is the message of your speech universal? Now, why do I ask this question? Is very I give a very good example of this. I'm a vegetarian. I used to be a non-vegetarian, right? But if I go on stage and I talk about not killing animals and not eating meat, I don't think it's universal enough for people to accept it, right? Because that is my own personal opinion. I don't think 99% of the world would be able to relate to that message. So is the message universal enough? That's question number 3 you have to ask yourself when you think of the topic of your speech, right? That is the reason Toastmaster has some regulations about speeches, right? So that's question number 3. Question number 4, how to choose the title of your speech. Because we're talking about topics right now, so how would you choose the title of your speech? Very simple. If in one sentence you can say your message, then out of that sentence, what is the main thing you're telling the audience? What is your message? For example, your message is never give up, okay? Or never give up on your dreams, but you would cut it down to never give up, which also can become the title of your speech, and it can also become the tagline of your speech. I have studied world champions from 1986 till today. So what I've noticed is majority of their speeches, the title and the tagline are the same. Majority, not all. So when you're about to decide on the topic of your speech and the title of it, that's the final question. What do you want to say? This year, my district speech was called Get Out, which was also my message. Originally, the speech title of that was called The Dragonfly, but I changed it to my message. So that's how you decide on the topic of your speech. The next part is key ingredients into structuring your speech. So when we have an opening of a speech, you have to establish a connection with the audience within the first 5 to 30 seconds. Okay, let me be very clear again. Within the first 5 to 30 seconds. Now let me give you an example, okay? My this year's district speech, I started like this. I left my house with the most motivating, uplifting, energetic words from my wife. Get out! Now, what did I do? I only had 5 or 6 seconds to establish that connection with the audience, right? So I did it by humor. Use the joke and humor. Immediately, I made them laugh. The connection is established. So that's one way of doing it within the first 5 to 30 seconds. The second thing is dialogue. You can have a dialogue. Now, 2014 world champion Dhananjaya, he starts by pulling out a flower and then he goes, you and I are as beautiful as this flower, right? He's having a dialogue. He's talking to the audience. 2016 world champion Darren Tay, he wears underwear and then he immediately goes, hey, loser, how do you like your new school uniform? Those were the words of my high school bully, Greg Umberfield. Again, there's a dialogue, not with the audience, but with someone else. Okay, so that's another way of establishing the audience attention in the first 15 to 30 seconds. Third is a dramatic story. Now, when I competed in 2017, I didn't start with humor. In fact, I started with a very dramatic opening. And here's how my opening was. I was lying on my deathbed. And as I gasped for the last breath of air before my soul left my body, my life flashed in front of me. 3 questions came to haunt me. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? And when the answer to all 3 questions was no, I had tears roll down my cheeks. Now, when I say that, what do you imagine? I want to ask you guys, anybody, what do you imagine when I say that? You're on mute.
Imagine myself also have the same situation.
Same situation. Okay. Like, what is the picture that I painted?
In the
What
hospital,
was the picture? Like, did you imagine a bed or a hospital?
like in the hospital, I was
Yeah,
imagining.
exactly. Correct. Like in a hospital. Today afternoon, I was teaching my students and I said the same thing to them. And both of them said the same thing. We were imagining an old man, on a hospital bed dying. So I was like, I'm not that old. But you see the picture I painted, it was dramatic. But I also established a connection because now the audience is thinking, oh my God, was he about to die? What happened, right? And fourth is using a prop, establishing that opening between 5 to 30 seconds. What do I mean by a prop? 2015 world champion, Mohammad Katani. He comes up on stage and he puts a cigarette in his mouth. And he's about to light it when everybody in the audience goes, no, 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 no. Okay? So he used a prop. Darren Tay, as I mentioned before, used an underwear and he made everybody laugh. Okay? Dhananjaya, 2014 world champion, he pulls out a flower and then he starts with a dialogue. So these are ways of establishing connection in the first 5 to 30 seconds with the audience. Now, there's another way which I haven't mentioned, but it also could be your title. Aaron Beverly, 2019 world champion. Back in 2016, he was first runner-up. And back then, his title was 57 words. So even before he entered the contest, people were already laughing. Okay? So he's established that connection even before he spoke, just by the contest chair reading the title. So that's the opening of the speech. Now I will go on to the body. Oh yeah, and state your message. I forgot about that. Right in the beginning of your speech, state your message. That's what 2018 world champion Ramona Smith did. She talks about life being a boxing match, and every time you get knocked down, get up, and and if you learn from those lessons, you'll keep still standing. That was her speech title, Still Standing. So state your message right in the beginning. You don't have to, but that's another way you can do it. Say your speech in the beginning, so later in the conclusion, it's more clear when it comes out. The next part is the body of your speech. So what is the body? The body for me is the roller coaster ride of emotions, right? You've already established your opening in the first 15 to 30 seconds. You've taken your audience up right to the top. Now it's time to take them for that roller coaster ride. And the first part to your body, when you write your story, right? Now that you've established what was your life-changing experience, you've attracted your audience is in your speech, is it one story? Is it 3 different stories or struggles? Is it one struggle, one story, or 3 different stories and a struggle? What do I mean by that? My this year's speech was about a small incident of me being kicked out by my wife and how that transpired in the next few hours. That was one struggle, one story. My speech in 2017 was about me struggling with those 3 questions. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? Now, I cannot explain more on it because, again, I'll have to go too deep into it. But you have to establish, do you want to have 3 different points in your story or 1 point? But in any case, you have to take these points up and down. You have to have 2, 3 up and down situations when you tell this story. The second part to the body is conflict. Okay? It's either a personal conflict or it's conflict with others. Like many times speeches are about you're having a personal conflict with yourself, right? Most of my speeches, I have a conflict with my wife. So the last 2 speeches, my last year's district speech, I had a conflict with my wife. This year also there was a conflict with my wife, and it could be a conflict with more. It could be 2, 3 people in your speech, not just one. So there has to be a conflict in your speech, whether it's a personal conflict, a personal challenge, or a conflict with others. Like I said, it could be a health issue, right? It's a personal conflict. The third part to this is emotion. When you're writing the body of your speech, you have to make the audience feel what you are feeling. Now, what do I mean by that? Anybody in this audience, I want you to describe a Big Mac to me. Can anybody here describe a Big Mac to me? I'm sure everybody's gonna had a Big Mac. Yes, Bun.
2 piece of bread, and there's meat in the middle, and then there's lettuce, and then there's tomato. There's a Big Mac.
Okay, thank you, Bun. Now, did you feel what Bun was feeling? No, he described it from the outer way, but let me describe it in a more different way, okay? As I went to take a bite of that Big Mac, I saw the soft sesame buns, the melted cheese, the rare cooked beef. And as I bit into the medium rare beef, oh, my saliva was coming down. Now you understand what do I mean by the audience needs to feel that what you're feeling. You need to play on their senses. Now imagine I'm a vegetarian and yet I describe the Big Mac, right? So when you describe your emotion in your speech, they need to feel it. If you're heartbroken, they need to feel your heartbreak. If someone in your family has passed away, they need to feel that. If you've been broken down, crumbled to the ground, they need to feel that in the body of your speech. Now, I cannot completely explain the words you have to use. That is something you all have to get into when you write your speech. The fourth part is the climax. What do I mean by the climax? Right? It's the tipping point where everything in your speech seems like a mess. Right? Every world champion has a point in a speech where they state their 3 struggles or their 1 struggle, and they're trying to overcome it. And there's a point in their speech where they just have this complete, everything seems like a mess, that it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen, right? That's the climax. It's the top point of everything seems that nothing's going to work out. That it's part of the conflict, but it's like towards the end of the conflict. And then after the climax, everything starts going downwards, you see? But while you write your speech, when you have your 3 different stories, you have the conflict, you have the emotion, you have the climax, you need humor to diffuse certain emotional points, okay? I've written here, diffuses emotions, elevates the mood. Now, why do I say that? When you take them down your 3 different struggles or 3 different stories, right? You need minimum 10 to 15 humorous points in your speech. And why do I say that? Because every world champion has had an average of 17 humorous points in their speech. Now, last year when I did my speech, it was called Why So Serious? So in that speech, I mentioned a point where one of my friends, who's a Toastmaster, his father passes away, and I was the first person to see the body. So when I said that story, everybody's mood went downward, right? Here I was being funny and it fell down. And then what happened was I had to bring them up. I had to bring the elevation up. So in that speech, what did I do? I said, I went home and I saw my wife went to sleep. And then I started tiptoeing into her room because I'm scared of my wife, right? So when I said that, the audience burst into laughter. You see, because everybody loves knowing that a man is scared of his wife, you know? So I brought them on that roller coaster journey down and I lifted them back up. Okay? And the final part to writing your body of your speech is transformation. After the climax, after the humor, there has to be a transformation. Your personal transformation or someone in your speech who has a transformation. And in that, the audience is involved as well. The audience needs to have a transformation in that speech. Because if the audience doesn't have a transformation, they will not understand your speech, right? They all have to be able to relate to it and like, oh my God, you know, we didn't see where this was going. And the final part to the body of your speech is hero. What do I mean by that? Every story has a hero or heroes. Now, most of the time, it's somebody else in your speech, whether your father, your mother, your friend, your grandfather, a grandmother, a toastmaster, an animal, a coach, a mentor. Sometimes you are the hero of your own speech. But what happens there is it's a bit risky. Okay, I only know one world champion who's been the hero of his own speech. That was Ed Tate back in 2000, 20 years ago. Mostly there are others who are heroes in your speech. So you need that one person who in your speech will be there who you thank. Like in my speech, it's my wife, or in my speech, it's my lawyer or someone, okay? Now I will get to the conclusion. Since I'm saying that we've run a little over time. Now the conclusion is the final nail in the coffin. Why do I say it's the final nail in the coffin? Is because I've seen so many speakers, they have such an amazing speech, but in the end, they just falter. They don't make use of, you know, whatever they have said. And the speech is like going so amazing and it suddenly just drops. That's why I say it's the final nail in the coffin. It's like delivering that message of yours so powerful that it seals the fate of the judges. They're like, yes, this is the speech that I want. You know, this is the speech that will transform me. This is the speech that they will remember after 1 week after the contest. So the first thing you have to do in your conclusion is call back your story or journey, right? So for example, in my speech, in 2019, last year, I started my speech like this. My name is Yogesh Kapoor, and I am very poor. Because I take things too personally. I expect things to be perfect. I don't know how to manage my relationships. Then again, when I came to the conclusion, I said, my name is Yogesh Kapoor, but I am no longer poor. I am rich because I know how to maintain my relationships. You see, so I call back my journey in that one line or two. Then is your tagline, right? Your tagline could be your speech title, which repeats towards the end. It could be the last thing you say or just before that. Okay, so my speech title last year was Why So Serious? And when I was ending my speech, I said why, and I made the audience react and said, so serious. Or like this year, my speech was get out. And in the end, when I end my speech, I say it to the audience, get out. So your tagline needs to be repeated in your conclusion, your message needs to be repeated. And finally, call to action. I find too many speakers make this mistake, you know, is like they don't tell the audience what the audience needs to do at the end of their speech. They just talk about their transformation. So this is the most important part is you need to tell the audience, you know, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to go make the world a better place? Do you want them to not be so perfect in their relationships and not be serious? What is it you want them to do? In my 2017 speech, Let It Go, I was asking them to let go of their past failures. So what is it you want them to do in the conclusion? That's called call to action. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the craft of writing a winning speech. And at the end of it, if you use these ingredients, you will have the perfect nasi goreng. And that's it for my presentation for today. I see we're quite over time, so I will not play the district speech. However, I will send the link later to your club in case they want to watch it. And I leave the floor open to any Q&A.
Thank you very much, Yogesh. It's very inspiring speech, and we learn quite a lot from you. In the content, I think you mentioned about the story and then ending up with hero. I think this is what we call a hero's journey, and it could be yourself or somebody else. But I think, as you mentioned, you have watched so many international speech champion, and you said most of them, the heroes are not them. So to be safe, maybe when you do an international speech, then have somebody as your hero, because statistically, the winner of themselves to be a hero is only one too many. Okay, now our floor is open. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Any question? Let me check. Okay, I would love to have the link of his speech crafting. I think about your champion speech, I think maybe you can give it to me later. It's okay. I can just send an email to the participant today.
Sure.
And we'll distribute. If there is no questions, I would like to ask you, if not talking about your championship, maybe later we will talk about the championship, but in a day-to-day Toastmaster journey, when you deliver a speech, what is your routine to come up with a speech? How do you practice? How do you do your speech, basically? Because I think this is our day-to-day routine, actually what built us to be a good speaker in a championship, because we cannot succeed. Suddenly we succeed, but we have to practice over time, right? I think the practice that you do every day, that's more important.
Yeah, so when I first started my speaking journey, and I will first explain about table topics. So what I used to do is, when I used to just have spare time, I would just challenge myself. Like, I would throw a topic at myself whenever I'm free. Maybe even when I'm sitting in the toilet, I would just go, dog. And then quickly I would think, what's the message? And I'd be like, every dog has his day. And in my mind, I would formulate the answer to that. And even when it comes to practicing my speeches, I would have an idea and I would run it in my head for months, like what I would put into it, what I would not put into it. I usually don't write my speeches till the last minute. It's a very bad habit of mine. Please don't do that. Sometimes I've been in a contest where I don't have a conclusion and I have to make it on stage. But I like working under pressure. That's my way. But in a general way, what I feel is a speech has to be polished. And the best way to, do it is practice in different settings. So do a speech at home in front of your spouse or your children or your partner, ask them for their feedback. I believe that you always should get a different perspective because in Toastmasters, sometimes what happens is we are too nice, to be honest. We give a very nice perspective, and I feel you need to get a different perspective with that as well. And also what I do is, when I was new to Toastmasters, I was obsessed. So I watched these world champion videos again and again and again and again. But what I did was I used to see, what is common about these world champions? Can I use this in my speech? Okay. So I would take those things and test it, like try opening this way or try opening this way. And trial and error is the best way to learn. When I did my speech in 2017, I think I have 27 different versions of that speech, like changing a word, changing a paragraph, changing a line. So it's a lot of self-practice, practicing in front of others as well. But everybody has their own style, whichever you're comfortable with. In my case, I do a lot of self-practice, but obviously when it comes to the contest time, I do it in my club, I try it in other clubs and get the feedback. And again, one thing very important about feedback, do not listen to everybody's feedback. You're gonna get very confused. Take the feedback that is the most common. If everybody is telling you your voice is monotone, then they're correct. But if somebody says, I don't like your opening, and somebody says, I like your opening, somebody says, I don't like your closing, somebody says, I like your closing. So you have to be very careful. You have to go with your gut feeling at that time. But the feedback that is the most common from majority of people, that must be correct.
Okay,
Yeah, I hope
thank
that
you.
answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And there is another question. Who is your role model in crafting your speech?
Who is my role model in crafting my speech? Well, out of all the world champions, my favorite world champion is Dhananjaya. Why? Because I love the way in his speech, he takes a flower and, towards the end of the speech, there's a twist. I'm not going to give it away if you've not seen the World Championship. So I find it and it was such a simple speech. The English was very simple and he was not over dramatic with his speech. And why do I say he was not over dramatic? I saw one of his interviews and he said, I didn't want to put too much drama into my speech. I wanted to win the speech in my own terms. And whenever I have done my speeches, a lot of members from other clubs and all have always complimented me that my style is very similar to Dhananjaya's. And he's my all-time favorite world champion. So I would consider him as the role model. If you see my Let It Go speech from 2017, I actually had only one Toastmaster realize that my setup of that speech is exactly like Dhananjaya's winning speech. But very few people realize that. And taking his setup took me to top 30 speakers in the world. So it works. So that's how I relate most to his speech, and also his message related most to me. So I use him as a role model for my speech.
Okay. Okay, thanks for sharing that. I think it's good to learn. And then another question, when your title of your speech is the same as your message, don't you feel like you're giving away the medal too soon?
I'm glad somebody asked this question. If you feel you're giving it away, then don't use it. Okay, so like my speech this year was called Get Out, right? Originally, as I mentioned, it was called The Dragonfly. But I felt that the message, by putting the message, I was giving away the message, but I wasn't giving away the story. Okay, but when I say The Dragonfly, I kind of give away the story. So it really depends. Now, again, in Dhananjaya's case, his speech, his message was, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. That was his tagline. That was his message. But he didn't say the full speech title. He just said, I see something. So he shortened it. So what you could do is maybe you can shorten it, not give it away completely, or like in Muhammad Thani's speech, his speech title was Power of Words. Okay, but he doesn't use that as his tagline. It's his message, but he just says Power of Words, and then he explains it. So it's up to you how you want to do it, but majority of the people I've seen, they give it away. As long as it's the message, but your story is not open, I feel is okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions? If there is no more question, Pak Inban wants to ask questions?
Yeah, just one, Yogesh. Yogesh, listening to you, I really am very inspired. Would you say that most of these champions, they come across they communicate very well because they share something very personal, something related to them that a lot of people can identify rather than an object lesson or a particular theme or a topic. So would you recommend, let's say, if you're choosing a winning message or winning speech, it is good to connect it to oneself and relate it. That way you evoke some emotions as well. Would you say it will be a wise idea?
Oh, yes, definitely. But you just have to be careful that you don't make it too emotional. Okay. What do I mean by that? Don't make them to a point where they're about to cry. Okay. Because then what happens is the mood of the speech goes very low and you want to leave them on a high note. You see, personal stories is always amazing, you know, because if my this year's speech starts with me being kicked out by my wife. Now, how many people would tell such a story, right? Being kicked out by a wife. And in that speech, I also say that I can see all the men are grinning, you know, because it's always the men who get kicked out, right? Not the women. My last year's speech was about me getting angry with my wife over stupid matters. And I wanted to divorce her, right? Again, it was a personal story, you see? And my 2017 speech was about failing, you know, failing at being a speaker, or failing at falling in love, or failing in finding my purpose. So the more personal it is, the better, because vulnerability is very important. When I first joined Toastmasters, a lot of people used to tell me, you know, how are you able to talk on any topic? And I've spoken about many subjects. I've spoken about being bankrupt. I've spoken about going to jail for one night. And, you know, people are like, how can you talk about all these things? And I say, because I believe one thing is, even if there's one person in the room that is going through a miserable time and they have contemplation of their life is over, or suicidal thoughts or anything, I believe if they hear my story and that turns it around for them, I have succeeded as a speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. And also maybe one last question from me. Do you have a mentor or a coach who helped you progress in your speaking career, basically?
I think I have many mentors, not one. My lovely members from AAA. You know, AAA is the only advanced club in Jakarta. They're all advanced speakers. The feedback they give me, so, and even other fellow Toastmasters from around the world. Like this year, honestly, I was going to drop out from the division contest. I was not feeling my speech. And then I had a friend from Hong Kong. I was telling her I want to give up, you know, this was the night before the contest. And she just messaged me and said, that's not your style, Yogesh, you know? And she said to me that, why are you doing this contest in the first place? So it was kind of a reminder to me that, oh, it's about the message. It's not about winning, you know? And so I changed my speech just before I felt, no, I need to deliver this message, especially during this pandemic. And then that morning, I had a friend from the US. He sent a little feedback to me just before the contest. And I quickly made some changes, you know, like 1 hour before the contest. And so majority of my mentors and coaches are my fellow club members and some friends around, Toastmaster friends around the world. And the others are the world champions, because I've watched their videos again and again and again and again, because every time I learn something new, sometimes, oh, I didn't realize he said that. Or I look at their facial expression, or I take their, the way they move their eyes, or, you know, their body language. And so those are also my mentors. I did have a coach in 2017. She was an Australian lady. However, what I realized was in the end, I didn't follow her. So I feel that my Toastmaster club members and friends around the world are the best mentors for me when it comes to the speaking and all.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And I see your focus and determination to win the champion and one day the world champion. And I want to see that, Yogesh. So I'm waiting for you to be a champion.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So please give a round of applause to Yogesh, and thank you very much, Yogesh, for delivering your speech. And it's really, really enlightening and very entertaining, actually, the way that you deliver your speech. And we learn a lot from tonight's speech.